The sun was low on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of red and orange. Aaron walked along the forest's edge with a small sack slung over his shoulder. He was used to this quiet routine, searching for herbs, roots, and wood before nightfall. The frontier world where he lived was calm most of the time, but the forest always carried a sense of mystery. The tall trees rose like ancient towers, their wide leaves glowing faintly with the planet's strange light. Every evening, strange songs of unseen creatures echoed in the distance. Aaron was a simple man. He had no army, no power, and no machines to follow his command. What he had were his hands, his tools, and his will to survive. His small home, built from stone and timber, stood alone on a hill near the forest. Many would have called the life lonely, but Aaron found peace in it. He had traveled far from crowded worlds and noisy cities, choosing instead the silence of this forgotten place. That evening, as he moved between the trees, he heard something different. It was not the usual cry of a bird or the low growl of a hunting beast. It was softer, weaker, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. Aaron froze, holding his breath. He listened closely, and the sound came again, faint, trembling like someone calling for help. His first thought was caution. The forest sometimes played tricks. Some creatures mimicked human voices to draw prey closer, yet there was something in that tone that did not feel like a trap. It carried fear, pain, and a strange kind of hope. Aaron moved carefully through the thick undergrowth, stepping over roots and pushing aside glowing vines. The sound grew clearer. It was not a voice shaped in full words, but it was definitely a cry for help. His heart beat faster as he followed it, his senses alert. Soon he found the source. Beneath a cluster of fallen branches lay a figure. At first, Aaron thought it was a trick of the light, for the skin of the figure shimmered faintly blue, glowing in the shadows. As he stepped closer, he saw the truth. It was a girl, alien but young and fragile-looking. Her arms were pinned under the weight of the heavy branches, and her breathing came in short gasps. Her eyes opened as he approached. They were large, shining like pools of silver, and filled with fear. She tried to speak, but only a soft sound escaped her lips. Aaron saw scratches across her skin, and though he did not understand her words, the meaning was clear. She was asking for help. Without hesitation, Aaron dropped his sack and knelt beside her. The branches were thick but not impossible to move. He pressed his hands under the nearest one and lifted with all his strength. The weight strained his muscles, but slowly the branch rolled aside. The girl let out a weak sound, somewhere between pain and relief. "Hold on," Aaron said softly, though he knew she might not understand his language. His voice carried calmness, the way one would speak to a frightened child or animal. Piece by piece, he cleared the branches. When at last she was free, the girl tried to push herself up but fell back with a cry. Her legs trembled as if they could not carry her weight. Aaron noticed the wounds on her side where sharp wood had cut into her skin. He quickly tore a strip from his own shirt and pressed it against the worst wound to slow the bleeding. She flinched at first, but when she saw that he meant no harm, her trembling eased. "Safe," she whispered, the word broken and heavy on her tongue. Aaron looked at her in surprise. She knew at least one word of his language. He gave her a small nod. "Safe," he repeated gently, pointing to himself. "I will help." The girl's silver eyes followed his gesture, and she gave a faint nod in return. The journey back to his home was not easy. Aaron lifted her carefully into his arms, though she was lighter than he expected. Her glowing skin gave off a faint warmth, as if her body carried a hidden energy. She rested her head weakly against his chest as he walked. Every few steps her lips moved as though she tried to speak, but the words came out broken. The forest seemed different on the way back. The usual noises had grown quiet, as if the creatures themselves watched in silence. Aaron quickened his pace, wary of any danger. His small stone house came into view at last, its windows glowing with the firelight he had left inside. He pushed the door open with his shoulder and carried the girl to his bed, laying her down gently. She looked around the small room with wide, curious eyes. The home was simple. Stone walls, a wooden table, shelves with herbs, and tools hung neatly on hooks. To Aaron it was ordinary, but to her it must have been strange. Aaron lit more candles, filling the room with soft light. He fetched clean cloths and a bowl of water, then knelt beside her. Carefully, he cleaned the wounds on her side and arms. The glowing blue skin made it hard to see the injuries at first, but his patient hands found each cut. The girl winced, her hand gripping the blanket tightly, but she made no sound of protest. Instead, she watched him with steady eyes as if trying to understand why this stranger cared. When the wounds were wrapped, Aaron offered her a small cup of water. She studied it for a moment, then drank slowly. A soft sigh left her lips and she whispered again, "Safe." Aaron sat back, his body tired from the effort, but his mind filled with questions. Who was she? Where had she come from? Why was she alone in the forest? He wanted to ask, yet he knew she could not answer fully. For now, survival came first. The girl's eyes grew heavy and soon she drifted into sleep. Aaron placed another blanket over her to keep her warm. He sat at the table watching the fire flicker, his thoughts restless. It had been years since anyone had knocked on his door. He had chosen solitude, thinking he needed no one. Yet now, without warning, a wounded stranger had entered his life. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen, fragile yet strong, mysterious yet trusting enough to rest under his care. Outside, the night deepened, and the forest returned to its usual chorus of sounds. But inside the small stone home, a quiet bond had begun to form. One act of mercy had changed Aaron's world, though he did not yet know how deeply that choice would shape the days to come. And as he finally closed his eyes to rest, he heard her whisper one last time in her sleep, soft and almost childlike, "Safe." For Aaron, it was a simple word, but it carried more weight than he could yet understand. Morning light entered the small stone house, creeping across the floor and touching the blanket where the alien girl slept. Aaron was already awake, sitting at the table with a cup of hot tea in his hand. He had hardly slept through the night, his thoughts circling again and again around the stranger he had rescued. He glanced toward the bed. The girl stirred slowly, her silver eyes blinking open. For a moment she looked confused, as though she had forgotten where she was. Then her gaze found Aaron. Her expression softened, and she whispered the one word she had managed the night before. "Safe." Aaron gave a small nod. "Yes, safe." He spoke gently, knowing she would not understand much. Still, he believed words carried meaning even without full understanding. He rose from his chair, walked to the table, and placed a small piece of bread and a bowl of fruit beside her. She studied them carefully, as if unsure whether she could accept the offering. Aaron broke a piece of bread, ate it himself, and smiled faintly. Her eyes brightened at the gesture, and she reached out. Her hand trembled, but she took the bread and ate in small bites. She chewed slowly, her glowing skin reflecting the morning light. Aaron watched quietly, not wanting to disturb her. For a long time they sat in silence. The sound of birds outside the window filled the air. When she had finished eating, she tried to speak again. Her voice was soft, broken, as though every word cost her great effort. "You saved me," she said, pointing to him. Aaron felt a warmth in his chest at the sound. He nodded once more. "Yes, I saved you." She frowned slightly, searching for words. Name." She tapped her chest, then said something in her own tongue. The word was melodic, but hard for Aaron to repeat. He tried once, and she laughed softly, though the sound was weak. She repeated it again slowly, as if teaching him. He tried a second time, and though he did not get it perfect, she smiled and nodded in approval. Aaron tapped his own chest. "Aaron," she repeated it carefully. "Aaron." The simple exchange created a bridge between them. Two people from different worlds, unable to share full sentences, had shared names instead. That was enough for the moment. Over the next days, the girl grew stronger. The wounds on her side healed slowly under Aaron's care. Each morning he changed the bandages and she would sit quietly, watching his every move with eyes full of gratitude. She began to move around the house, exploring like a curious child. She touched the wooden shelves, the tools, and even the fire that burned in the hearth, pulling back quickly when the heat surprised her. Aaron noticed how she always tried to help, even when she was weak. She carried small buckets of water from the well, though they were heavy for her. She gathered herbs from the table, arranging them neatly. Sometimes she would hum in her own language, a soft tune that filled the room with calmness. Communication between them grew step by step. She learned small words: water, fire, food, home. Aaron, in turn, learned to read her gestures. A pointed finger, a tilted head, a smile. All these spoke where words could not. One evening, as the firelight danced on the walls, Aaron asked softly, "Where are your people?" The girl looked down at her hands, her expression clouding with sadness. She did not answer in words. Instead, she traced a shape on the table with her finger, a circle surrounded by smaller dots. Then she crossed it out with a trembling hand. Aaron understood at least part of it. A place, perhaps a village or a camp, was gone. He wanted to ask more, but he saw the sorrow in her eyes and decided not to press her. Instead, he placed his hand over his chest and said, "Safe." She met his eyes and repeated the word, her voice firm this time. Safe. Days passed, and a quiet bond grew between them. Aaron had lived alone for so long that he had forgotten the feeling of companionship. The girl's presence changed the rhythm of his life. The house no longer felt empty. The silence was filled with her soft songs, her attempts to speak, her gentle laughter when Aaron stumbled over a word in her tongue. One morning, Aaron decided to show her the forest during daylight. She had grown strong enough to walk, though he still worried. Together they stepped outside, the fresh air carrying the scent of flowers and damp earth. She looked around with wide eyes, amazed by the open fields and tall trees. When they reached the stream nearby, she knelt at the water's edge. Her hands hovered above the surface, and to Aaron's surprise, the water seemed to glow faintly where her fingers touched it. She smiled at him as if to say she felt at home here. Aaron watched with quiet wonder. He realized there was more to her than simple survival. She carried something unique, something connected to the world in a way he did not yet understand. That night, as the stars filled the sky, the girl sat near the window gazing upward. She whispered words in her own language, her eyes full of longing. Aaron sat beside her, following her gaze. He wondered what she saw in those stars, memories of her people or dreams of a future she feared she would never reach. Finally, she turned to him and said in broken speech, "You. Good, you. Strong, thank." Aaron shook his head slowly. "I only did what was right." She tilted her head, not fully understanding, but she smiled again. The bond between them was fragile but real, built not on shared language but on shared kindness. As the firelight flickered and the night deepened, Aaron felt a thought rising in his mind. His life had been simple, quiet, and alone. Now with this unexpected guest, it had become something new. He did not know what the future would bring, but he sensed that his choice to save her had begun a story far larger than himself. And as sleep finally came, the last sound he heard was her voice whispering his name, soft, uncertain but filled with trust, Aaron. The days passed quietly, and the small stone house on the hill no longer felt like a lonely place. The girl had grown stronger under Aaron's care. Her steps were still careful, but she walked without pain now. She spoke a little more of his language each day, though her sentences were short and broken. Aaron found himself listening with patience, filling in the meaning when words failed. One evening, after they had shared a meal of cooked roots and fruits gathered from the forest, the girl sat across from him. Her silver eyes seemed brighter than usual, and she looked at him as if she wanted to say something important. She tapped her chest and spoke her name again, slow and clear. Then she pointed at him. "Aaron, save him, Aaron, friend." The words were simple, yet they carried a weight that touched him deeply. He gave a small nod, unable to find his own words. For so long he had lived without the company of another. To hear someone call him friend stirred something inside him he had thought long forgotten. That night he dreamed of stars and voices he could not understand. He dreamed of silver eyes shining in the dark, of whispers carried by the wind. When morning came, the memory of the dream lingered like a shadow. On the fourth morning after that, something changed. Aaron woke early as usual, stepping outside to draw water from the well. The air was fresh, the sky painted with the first light of dawn. Yet as he reached for the bucket, he noticed something strange. The forest below the hill was silent. The usual morning songs of birds and calls of beasts were gone. He froze, every sense alert. Then he saw movement. Shapes rose from the edge of the trees, many shapes. At first he thought they were a band of travelers or hunters, but as they moved closer, his breath caught. There were women. Not one, not two, but many. Their glowing blue skin shone in the early light, and their eyes reflected silver just like the girl he had saved. They walked in silence, their robes woven from threads that shimmered like crystal under the sun. They moved with grace, yet their faces carried caution. Aaron felt his chest tighten. He turned back toward the house. The girl had stepped outside, drawn by the sudden stillness. When she saw the approaching figures, she gasped softly. Her hand rose to her lips and her eyes widened with disbelief. The group reached the foot of the hill and stopped. Nearly 20 women stood together. their expressions shifting between awe and uncertainty. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air seemed to hold its breath. Then the girl walked forward. Her steps were slow at first, but then faster, as if courage grew inside her with each stride. She raised her hands and called out words in her own tongue, her voice trembling but full of emotion. One of the women from the group stepped forward. She was taller than the others, her robe lined with darker threads, her bearing calm and steady. She answered in the same language, her tone measured but soft. The girl's voice shook as she replied again. She pointed back toward Aaron, then placed her hand on her chest. Her words grew stronger, almost desperate. The taller woman glanced at Aaron, her silver eyes narrowing slightly as though weighing his spirit from afar. Aaron stood still, unsure what to do. He was only one man with no weapons, no power, nothing to prove himself worthy of their trust. Yet the girl he had saved kept pointing at him, her voice rising with urgency. Finally, the tall woman raised her hand and the others lowered their heads respectfully. She stepped up the hill with careful grace until she stood a few paces from Aaron. For a long moment, she studied him in silence. Her silver eyes were deep, filled with thoughts he could not read. Then in slow, broken words of his language, she spoke. "You saved her?" Aaron nodded once. "Yes, she was hurt. I helped." The woman's eyes softened slightly. She turned to the girl who had followed her closely. They spoke again in their own tongue, their voices weaving like a song. Then, to Aaron's surprise, the tall woman bowed her head slightly toward him. Behind her, the other women lowered themselves as well, a silent gesture of respect. Aaron felt uneasy. He had done nothing but what anyone should do, help a life in danger. Yet to them it seemed to mean far more. The girl stepped closer to him, her eyes bright with emotion. She touched his arm lightly and whispered, "They believe." Aaron frowned. Believe what? But she could not explain further. Her words failed and she shook her head helplessly. Instead, she turned back to the others and spoke in her own language once more. Her voice carried strength now, no longer trembling. The group listened intently. Some gasped, others nodded slowly. When she finished, silence fell again. Then the tall woman looked back at Aaron and said in halting words, "We, tribe, we lost you." Change. Aaron did not know what to answer. His heart beat heavily in his chest. He looked from face to face, seeing hope in their eyes, fragile yet burning like a small flame in the dark. He drew a breath and said simply, "You are safe here." The girl repeated his words in her own language, her voice ringing clear. The women murmured among themselves and some smiled faintly. That day, the hill that had once held only a single lonely house was alive with quiet voices. The women gathered in small groups, speaking softly, their silver eyes glancing often toward Aaron. They moved with caution, but also with relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from them. Aaron worked to bring more water, more food, whatever he could offer. The girl helped him, translating where she could. Each time she spoke his name, the others repeated it softly as though it carried meaning beyond the sound. When night fell, the women lit small fires outside the house, their soft songs filling the air. Aaron stood at the doorway watching them. The girl joined him, her face glowing in the firelight. "You saved me," she said, her voice steady. "Now, I'll see. I'll know." Aaron felt the weight of her words. He had not asked for followers or respect. He had only chosen to act when he found her in need. Yet somehow that single act had become something far greater in the eyes of her people. As the stars filled the sky, Aaron realized his life would never again be what it once was. The solitude he had known had ended. In its place stood a new beginning, one he could not yet understand but would soon have to face. The quiet bond between one man and one stranger had now opened the door to an entire tribe. And though Aaron still felt unworthy of the role they seemed to place upon him, he could not ignore the truth shining in their silver eyes. To them, he was more than a rescuer. He was hope. The morning after the arrival of the tribe was quiet yet heavy with unspoken questions. The small hill that had once been silent now held life and voices. Fires smoldered in the grass where the alien women had rested during the night. Their soft songs, carried in a language Aaron still could not understand, drifted with the wind. Aaron stood outside his stone house looking down at the group. He felt as though the world had shifted beneath his feet. He had saved one girl, Yet now 20 more stood at his door, watching him with eyes that carried both hope and caution. He had never asked for this. He had never imagined it. The girl he had saved stood beside him. Her wounds were nearly healed now, and her strength had returned. Her silver eyes were steady as she looked at the tribe below. She seemed both happy and afraid, as if the weight of a great secret pressed on her shoulders. Aaron spoke softly. "Why have they come?" She hesitated, searching for words in his language. "They see you. They believe." It was the same answer she had given before, but Aaron felt there was more. He crouched down so his eyes met hers. "Tell me, please, I want to understand." The girl drew a slow breath. She looked at the ground, then at the sky, as if asking for strength. At last she pointed to herself, then to the women below. "We lost." Her voice trembled, but she pressed on. "Long ago. Strong, many, then hunted, many gone." Aaron's chest tightened. He understood enough. Their people had been attacked, scattered, almost destroyed. The girl continued with broken words, her hands shaping the meaning where words failed. "Trust gone. No trust outsiders. All fear, but you—" She touched his arm gently. "You help. You know fear. You know hate. You save." Her silver eyes glistened. "Now tribe see. Now tribe believe. One human can be good." Aaron felt her words strike deeply. He had never thought of himself as special. He had only acted as he believed anyone should, help someone in need. Yet to them this was proof that not all outsiders wished them harm. Later that day, the tall woman who seemed to lead the tribe came to speak with him. Her steps were calm, her presence commanding. The girl stayed beside Aaron to translate what she could. The leader's voice was low and steady. She spoke in her own tongue, and the girl translated piece by piece. She says, "We are last of our people. Once hundreds, now only us. Enemy took all others. Enemy still hunt. We hide many years. Always move. Always fear." Aaron listened carefully, his heart heavy. He thought of the lonely nights he had spent in his stone house, and for the first time he realized his loneliness was nothing compared to theirs. He had chosen solitude. They had been forced into it. The leader spoke again, and the girl's voice shook as she translated. She says, "When she see you help me, she know, maybe not all lost. Maybe new path," she says. "You are proof." "Proof of honor," Aaron frowned. "Honor? I am no hero. I am only a man who could not leave someone to die." The girl translated his words, and the leader gave a small, calm smile. She placed her hand over her chest, then over his. Even without translation, the meaning was clear. She believed his choice mattered more than he understood. That night the tribe gathered around a large fire at the base of the hill. They sang songs in voices that rose and fell like waves. Aaron sat among them, feeling out of place but welcome. The girl sat close by, sometimes whispering translations when she could. The songs told stories. He could not understand the words, but he saw the tears in their eyes and the strength in their voices. They sang of their lost homes, of battles fought, of families gone. Yet within the sadness there was also hope. Their voices grew stronger each time they looked at him, as if he himself was a part of the story they now carried. When the songs ended, the leader stood. She raised her hands, and silence fell. She spoke slowly in broken human words, her accent heavy but her meaning clear. "You save one. You change all. We not forget. We stand with you." Aaron felt the weight of her promise. He looked at the faces around the fire, faces marked by sorrow, yet now lit with a fragile hope. They were placing their trust in him, a single human living alone on a hill. He did not feel worthy of it. He was no warrior, no leader. But as he looked at the girl who now smiled at him with quiet trust, he realized he could not turn away. The days that followed were filled with learning. The tribe showed him things he had never seen before. They knew herbs that healed wounds faster than anything he had used. They showed him how to weave strong rope from crystal thread vines, how to store food so it lasted longer, how to listen to the forest for signs of danger. In return, Aaron shared what little he knew. He showed them how to reinforce shelters with stone, how to trap fish in the stream, how to use fire to harden wooden tools. The exchange was clumsy at first, slowed by the barrier of language, but slowly they learned from one another. Sometimes when the sun set and the sky turned gold, Aaron would watch the tribe working together. For the first time in years, his hill no longer felt empty. Laughter and voices filled the air. He realized he had not only given them shelter, they had given him something too. They had given him a place among others again. One evening, the girl approached him while he was stacking wood near the house. Her expression was serious. "You not understand full," she said softly. "Not just save. Not just help. To us, you are change. Before you, we only hide. Only fear now. We think maybe future again." Aaron set down the wood and looked at her. "Future?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, future, with trust, with hope. You give that." Her words echoed in his mind long after she left. He had thought he was only helping a stranger. Now he understood he had become a symbol of something far greater. The truth was clear. To these women, his choice had become more than an act of kindness. It was a turning point, proof that trust could exist again. He felt humbled, even frightened by the weight of their faith. Yet as the stars appeared above and the tribe gathered once more to sing, Aaron made a silent promise. He would not turn away from the role they had given him. He would stand with them, as they now stood with him. For though he had once lived only for himself, he now carried the hopes of an entire people. The first light of dawn touched the small hill, spilling golden rays across the fields and the forest beyond. Aaron stood outside his stone house looking at the camp that had formed near his home. The tribe of women moved quietly among the fires, preparing food, tending to small tasks, their soft voices carrying in the morning air. A month ago, his life had been one of silence. Now the silence was gone, replaced by voices, songs, and the sound of life returning. He still woke early, still carried water from the well, still chopped wood as he always had. But each action now carried new meaning. He was no longer living for himself alone. The girl he had saved stepped out of the house, her silver eyes bright in the sunlight. She had grown strong and healthy again. Her wounds were gone, and her steps carried confidence. She greeted him with a smile and spoke his name softly. "Aaron." He returned the smile. "Good morning." Her speech had improved over the weeks. She still spoke slowly, her sentences broken, but her understanding grew each day. She now knew enough words to share thoughts that had once been locked inside her. Together they walked down the hill to where the tribe gathered. The leader of the women rose to greet them. She was tall, her presence calm yet commanding. Her robe lined with threads that caught the light. She placed her hand over her chest in greeting, and Aaron did the same. This had become their way of showing respect. That morning the tribe gathered in a circle. The leader spoke in her own tongue, her voice strong and steady. The girl translated as best she could. She says, "Time is now. We cannot hide forever. We must build. We must grow. We must stand." Aaron listened carefully. He looked around at the women. Their faces carried determination, though shadows of past sorrow lingered in their eyes. They were survivors, but they longed for more than survival. They longed for a future. The leader then turned to Aaron, her silver eyes fixed on him, and she spoke slowly in broken human words. With you, with us?" Aaron hesitated only a moment before answering. "Yes, I am with you." The girl translated his words, and a murmur of relief swept through the group. Some smiled, some nodded, and for the first time Aaron saw hope shining clearly in all their eyes. From that day, work began. Aaron showed them how to shape stones into strong walls, how to dig trenches to guide rainwater, how to build roofs that would last through storms. The tribe taught him in return how to weave cloth from glowing vines, how to gather plants that healed faster than any medicine he had known, how to find safe paths through the forest. They worked side by side from dawn to dusk. Laughter often broke the air, mixed with songs in their language. The girl stayed close to Aaron, helping him teach and translate. Her voice grew stronger with each passing day. At night, when the fires burned and the stars filled the sky, the tribe shared stories. Aaron could not understand all the words, but the tone of their voices painted pictures in his mind. He saw in their songs memories of families long gone, battles fought, and journeys across the stars. Each time their voices grew heavy with sadness, they looked at him, and their tones lifted again, filled with hope. Weeks turned into months. The hill that had once held only a single stone house now held many shelters. Fields were cleared for planting. A stream was guided into channels for water. The sound of hammers and voices filled the air each day. One evening, as Aaron carried wood toward the fires, the girl approached him. She had a thoughtful look on her face. You change, she said softly. Aaron frowned slightly. Change? She nodded. Before, alone now. Not alone. Before, silence. Now voices. You change. We change. Her words made him pause. She was right. His life had been quiet but empty. Now it was full, sometimes too full, yet it carried purpose. He realized he had not only given them shelter, they had given him something greater. They had given him belonging. That night the leader of the tribe called for a gathering. A great fire was lit at the center of the camp, and all the women gathered around. Aaron stood among them, feeling their eyes upon him. The leader raised her hands and silence fell. She spoke in her language, her voice carrying weight. The girl translated in a whisper beside him. She says, "We are not only survivors now, we are builders. We are future, and you are part of us. No longer outsider, you are tribe." Aaron felt a deep warmth spread in his chest. He had not asked for this honor, yet it was given freely. The women around him lowered their heads in respect. The girl looked at him with shining eyes and whispered, "Now you are one of us." The fire crackled, sparks rising into the night sky. For the first time in many years, Aaron felt something he had thought lost: home. The days that followed were busy, filled with hard work and laughter. Yet Aaron knew challenges lay ahead. The enemy that had once hunted the tribe still existed somewhere in the stars. Danger could return at any time, but now he was not alone. One morning, as he stood on the hill and looked out across the growing camp, the girl joined him. She placed her hand lightly on his arm and spoke. "Future begins," she said. "Not easy, but strong, together." Aaron nodded slowly. Together, they stood side by side, watching the tribe below as the sun rose higher. The fields stretched green. The shelters stood strong, and voices filled the air with life. What had once been broken was now mending. What had once been only survival was becoming a future. Aaron did not know what the years ahead would bring. But he knew one thing with certainty. He would face them with these people, his people beside him. For he had saved one life, and in return he had found a family, a tribe, and a new beginning.